Hi friends, this is Marilyn from tarotclarity.com, and today's video will please those of you who are interested in seeing tarot decks from the old days. I have 4 copies of the Vacchetta tarot deck, and the most recent is this one from Anima Mundi, I think that's what it's called, or Anima Antiqua, excuse me, from Lo Scarabeo. The other 3 versions I have, and I've done videos on comparing all 3 of these. One is by a Spanish publisher, Julian M. White, although that name doesn't sound Spanish, but I know it is a Spanish, a Spanish deck published in Spain. The second is also by Lo Scarabeo, Tarot of the Master. And on this one, I should point out that it's got the characteristic multiple languages on the side, and it has these unfortunate green borders. The Serio publication by Julian M. White is more it is more just having the frame and the image. And then the third copy of this deck that I have is, I'm guessing, if I had to go out on a limb, is my favorite of the 3. And this one is by Il Meneghello, and has its characteristic, square corners, cardstock, and high quality production. So you might ask, why do you need to have 4 copies of the same deck? Well, I'm not going to be showing any more about these 3 decks, except that I want to mention that the reason why I have so many copies is because every time you buy a copy of this deck by someone who colors it in, we have different colors. So we have one palette, which was chosen by Julian M. White of Serio Publishing, right? We have another way that the artwork was colored and presented in the Lo Scarabeo. Maybe not as bright colors as over here. And then, of course, we have the Il Meneghello with their, saturated color and beautiful application of color. So why do I need another deck? Well, this particular deck, the Anima Antiqua series by Lo Scarabeo, presents us with, decks more in their, I don't want to say facsimile form, because there's always something that has to be done to make a deck palatable to be photographed and used by people. But it is the way the deck currently exists, which is without color. So the extant deck that exists is a deck without color, some type of etching, right? That, after it was printed, then somebody would have been commissioned or paid to apply color. And so when modern day publishers get their hands on the deck, coloring it is up for grabs. They can color it any way they see fit, and you decide which one works for you. Now, I really like this deck by Serio Publishing, or Julian M. White. I like it a lot. I like the colors. I, in some cases, actually like the colors chosen by this version of Lo Scarabeo, but as I said, those borders are rather unfortunate, and they kind of interfere with, using the deck. And this one is just so beautiful. but they're all three different, you know. So, and sometimes when something is colored a certain way, you notice it more readily or less readily than if it appears in color in another deck, right? So it's interesting to me to see this deck without any color. And I thought maybe I'd share it. Now, this deck was originally created, I believe, in 1893. And Vacchetta actually didn't die until, I don't know, in the 40s sometime. And it really kind of like blows me away to realize that this guy was still alive when my own mother was alive, you know. So it's not that long ago from my perspective, which is kind of interesting because 1893 sounds like a long time ago. Okay. Il Gatto, we see there are no numbers. And here he appears as a leopard, the dog. Kind of brief, you know, kind of looks more like a leopard, right? Pants tied at the bottom. Holding the sack around his, you know, like a wrist, almost like a wrist bag. His pants are pulled. A baguette. La papesa. We have the cherubs in the back. We have some type of cloud landscape. She has her book. Not quite sure if it's a triple tiered crown of the Pope, but she is named Pope, the female Pope. The Empress, number 3. And she has the orb and the cross showing the multiple continents. She's seated on a fluffy pillow, which is interesting. In some TDM decks, for those of you who are TDM aficionados, right, we see what appears to be some kind of unknown object, you know, and wondering if it could have been a misunderstanding of a pillow, that she was sitting on a pillow. I think you see that on the Noble deck. Here we have the Emperor. Number 4, we see the Imperial Cross. He also has the globe with the cross. I meant Imperial Eagle. I think Imperial Cross. I think I said Imperial Cross, so I apologize. And then we have the Pope, who more clearly has a triple tier crown of a Pope. He's got the keys of the kingdom. He's got his triple cross scepter. L'amour appears just as a blindfolded Cupid, no lovers in the picture. We do have a pair of birds and a heart with an arrow through it, which is interesting. Now remember that this deck is, you know, like 20 years before Pamela Coleman Smith, which in a minute we'll see why that is an interesting fact. Here we have the Chariot. No horses. Justice. She is not blindfolded. It's almost like she's in like a niche in a building, right? She's like a sculpture in a building. That's what this is like. The Hermit. And he's giving his lantern a rest. You see, he's seated. He's got a book. There's a road behind him, and he's more in his lean-to type of structure. He's got his crutch from early Italian decks, and he still is an old man. Lady Fortune, or La Fortuna. Her horn of plenty, right? She's on top, and she is not. Or he. It's not clear what that figure is. We have a rabbit, a hare, going down. Okay, so this is like the hunt, the fox and the hare. So sometimes you're hunted and sometimes you're the hunter. Sometimes you're on top and sometimes you're not. And for the representation of fortitude, we have a virtuous woman with a column and a lion. So we have the elements, the common elements of fortitude, both represented in this deck. Here, the Hanged One is not hung by one foot, but by both, which is unusual. And this one is named as well as numbered. It's unusual. I mean, a lot of the tarot decks traditionally leave L'Amour off the deck, but some put it in. It could have been, simply that they couldn't fit it. They couldn't fit the name in to get the picture that they wanted, and then maybe it became a tradition. Or you could have had a deeper meaning, as in, to name something gives it power. So if you don't name it, you don't give it power. And look at all the items that he's reaped, I suppose. People of all stations of life. I'm looking to see what this thing is. That must be the triple-tiered crown of the Pope, a bishop, and a person in charge, a king, an emperor, something like that. A warrior, winged, well, he's got wings on that hat, on that helmet. A ship in the background. And Temperance. This entrance to hell for the devil is actually taken from a nightclub, I believe it was, in Paris that was destroyed in the 50s. And off the top of my head, I can't think of the name of it. But in my other video of the same deck by the 3 different publishers, I get into it, what it references. So if you want to go check that out. The actual entrance to the building was this. And I believe it was torn down in the 1950s in order to put up a grocery store. What a shame, right? So we have the image of an evil incarnate. He's got his pitchfork. He's got his tail, which is serpentine. He's got his wings that are not virtuous wings. And it's a cool reference to an actual location that we know of, what it is. Now, that building's been gone for 70 years or 60 years. And so if it wasn't for photographs, and, who would know that it even existed? And this is an example of how a location could have served as the motivation for creating a particular card, right? But, now maybe we don't know the building that served as motivation for something like the tower or any of the other cards. We have a tower clearly in flame, definitely struck by lightning. We have the arrow there to show that it's coming this way. People fall to their demise. One is speared. Oh, that's terrible. the Star card. And unlike the story of a woman irrigating the land when the constellation Aquarius appears in the sky, I think right along the equator, it's a sign that the rains come, and then of course the Nile will flood, and then it gives us an opportunity to irrigate the land. So, this is an example of maybe the meaning of irrigating the land was somehow lost in translation, or when they were copying previous decks, it looked like the water was, the pictures of water were going back into the land rather than, the water, rather than from the water to the land. Who knows? It's still a beautiful card. And we have Lady Diana, the goddess Diana. Hunt, right? Done at night, and with the association of Cancer. I'm guessing Apollo, but I could be wrong. So if I am, please tell me down below. Off the top of my head, that's just what I'm guessing. Of course, the bundle of wheat, or whatever that is I'm sure a significant symbol. Judgment. And the World card. Now, I had mentioned earlier reference to the Waite Coleman Smith deck and how this came out 20 years prior to the Waite Coleman Smith, which came out in 1909, I think 1910. And here we see fully illustrated pip cards. Now, they're not as animated as the Waite Coleman Smith. There's not people in every picture. But we do get a scene. Now, I know some of you are going to say, oh, but the Solo Busca, and you're right, the Solo Busca was, as far as we know, the oldest tarot with fully illustrated cards for all cards. But still, even when this was put out, it was still unusual because the Tarot of Marseille was really the popular prototype after it left Italy. The TDM was kind of like the deck. Other decks were fashioned, right? So this did deviate from that. So, it's kind of interesting to, realize that this deck would have been printed, right? And then someone would have, under the direction of, I guess, the printer, the workshop, been told, how to color it. Maybe they had carte blanche, although that wouldn't have allowed for uniformity. Maybe they were colored with stencil. I looked in the information booklet and I didn't really get a lot of information. I didn't get any information on that process. So I don't know if you are interested in seeing the rest of the cards in their original state, but I thought at least it would be fun to show you guys, For those of you who attended the artisan workshop, this is getting off point. Thank you for attending. most of the reason that I haven't been doing videos as prolifically as usual is because I devoted a lot of my time and attention to that presentation, to that lecture. And if you caught it, I hope you enjoyed it. I was rather proud of it. So you see the King of Coin kind of has a similar look to the Magician, although his passion here is money, is coin, right? And here we kind of have a Fool feel to the Ace of Baton. And for those of you who are super duper interested, I will just keep going through so you see all the cards. So it's interesting, here we have like a pan flute with horns and drumsticks, right? So we have a musical connotation here. And here we have like a harvest, which is interesting for the 7 of baton. Is that 7 or 8? Excuse me, 8. And then look at the organ, the pipe organ for number 9. So the batons themselves are being represented as pipe organs. It's like with a, you know, musical score. And, you know, so if you were to use this deck, you might associate, you know, the suit of batons with the usual things, but then also with the extra element of music, you know. Has kind of a court jester feel to it. Wow, so here with the 9 of Nine of Swords, does that look familiar? Right? I mean, it was, may or may not have been referencing the Sola Busca, which has, you know, speared heart. And then, of course, we know that Pamela Coleman Smith was more directly influenced by the Sola Busca in her images, but who knows? I mean, she may have taken something from this deck as well, since it was only 20 years prior to her deck, or 27 years. So this is the Vacchetta deck as it exists today, more or less, published by the Anima Antiqua series by Lo Scarabeo. It was just released this year sometime. It doesn't give a date here, but in the booklet or on the box somewhere it does say 2021, so I know it was published this year. So I hope you enjoyed it, and this might be a reason why some people have more than one copy of a deck. Just see how other publishers might present the deck. And it's always, for me, very fascinating and interesting to have a copy of however the original deck survives, which is what this is. Until next time, friends, peace and stay well.